for a few moments, I would like for us to consider the subject, holding ourselves captive.
All right now.
Holding ourselves captive. Some of you know I'm a history buff. And one of the most fascinating subjects in all of the history of man is that of the deleterious effects of slavery on the psychological evolution of the people affected by it. No matter where in history we find a people enslaved, there is a residual effect that seems to always insinuate itself long after freedom has been won by those who were held captive. And what makes it even more insidious is that those affected are oblivious to the long-term ramifications of their subjugation. Now, I think I may have lost some of you, if not all of you. So let me break it down this way. Long after the chains have been removed, there is still a mental block that keeps the slave locked in to the old patterns of their captivity.
All right now. Come on.
And they willingly, I say they willingly do now what they were forced to do before.
Come on now.
They are literally held or are holding themselves captive.
Well, come on.
And it would not be so bad if this mentality was benign.
Well, all right.
But unfortunately, it is malignant. And it's passed on from generation to generation, either in the form of submission to the will of anyone or anything, or carrying the weight of paranoia, believing everyone who does not agree with me is against me. And all too often we do one in the name of friendship and the other in the name of nationalism or patriotism. And from either perspective, we are holding ourselves captive. I think you should turn to your neighbor and ask the question this morning, are you holding yourself captive?
Are you holding yourself captive?
We have all heard the story of how Israel gained VIP status upon entering Egypt because of the loss of the son who was found in the position he had dreamed he would attain, even though others tried to prevent him from being what God had created him to be. How many times have we been prevented from reaching a goal and are still stuck in a place we should have left a long time ago? How many times have we looked back on our lives and said we woulda, shoulda, coulda done this or that, but, and that but has turned into a lifetime of regret? How many times, I say, have we been told that we just weren't good enough? And we believe that report instead of pressing onward, consequently letting the fire of desire burn itself out. Joseph didn't allow the obstacles and pitfalls and stumbling blocks placed before him prevent him from realizing his dream. He became the example for all time of how we should press on even when we cannot see the end result. He became the example of how when life gives you lemons, you should make some lemonade. He became the example for you and for me that if we trust and never doubt, God will surely bring us out. That we need not let what is happening in our lives put us in a position whereby we find we are holding ourselves captive. And if I were to take my seat right now, if I were not to say another word, which I'm not going to do, but if I were, somebody should be giving God some praise right now for leaving us the example of how bad thing can turn out to be good.
Yeah.
The Bible. The Bible tells us that after the death of Joseph and Pharaoh, Israel lost its VIP status. And they were reduced to the position of slaves.
All right now.
Which reminds me of that old Sinatra song, "That's life, that's what the people say, riding high in April and shot down in May."
All right. All right. Mercy God.
Well, for the next 400 years, Israel is physically and mentally placed in bondage. And for all that time, they pray to God. They pray to a God they have not heard from. And to some extent, many now question the existence thereof.
All right.
Isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting how God always shows up right on time?
Yes.
Isn't it interesting how God can make a way out of no way? Isn't it interesting how God can free us from captivity? But we keep holding ourselves captive. Now most of you know, if not all of you, that I was in a car accident. And interestingly enough, having been a driver for more than 40 years, I've never been in that kind of accident before. Not an accident of that magnitude. Yes, I've tapped a fender and had mine tapped, and we got out the cars, looked, shook hands, and walked away. Or as they say in basketball, no harm, no foul.
All right.
But this was something quite different. And the only reason I'm talking about it is because I almost let this accident hold me captive.
All right now. All right.
How
now.
so, you might ask?
All
Well,
right
I'm glad you did.
Talk about it.
At first, after the accident, I got home and I thought about nothing else. Nothing else but the accident, to the point that I could not sleep, and I just kept reliving the moment over and over and over again. I allowed my pain to be my excuse for not leaving the house and not getting behind the wheel of a car again. I told my wife and my son, who took on the responsibility of taking KJ back and forth to school and visiting my wife in the hospital, that I was only apprehensive, that I was not afraid to drive, only apprehensive. But finally my son had to go back to work. And I was forced to get behind the wheel of a car. And all the while I was saying I was apprehensive, what I was really saying was that I was afraid. Because the word apprehensive means to be fearful. And as I look back over my staying in bed and not wanting to go to the doctor or drive, I began to realize that I was holding myself captive to a situation which, although had long since gone, I was still living in the moment of captivity. And I began to wonder, yes, I began to wonder, how many of us are holding on to